Hey folks, this is Piano Man Steve Lungrin. Thanks for tuning in. I'm the founder of PianoManApproach.com and creator of the Piano Man Approach online piano course. I appreciate you stopping by. We're going to be taking a look at my song learning formula through the context of Heaven by Bryan Adams, one of the great Canadian artists of all time and one of my favorite singer-songwriter / solo artists of the last 50 years or so. The song learning formula, the reason I say that, this isn't a note-for-note tutorial. This is me showing you how you can take this formula and learn any song, but the best way to demonstrate it is to show you through one song at a time, and that's what these videos are all about. So, first and foremost, before I get started on the lesson, I just want to ask if you enjoy content like this. I would sure appreciate it if you would give it a like and maybe subscribe to my channel and click the bell if you would like to receive updates when I put new content out. It really helps me rise up in the search rankings and certainly helps fuel new content like this. Enough of that housekeeping, though. Let's carry on with the lesson, shall we? So, before we get started, let's just take a look at what this whole song learning formula is. As I said, I call it the GLIDE formula. It's an acronym. Let me bring my kind of handy-dandy visual aid up here. So we have 5 steps. The first one is get the chords. The second one is listen to the song. The third is identify the essential feel or rhythm pattern. The fourth is drill it down, and the 5 is enhance it with improv and signatures. So, some of that stuff is going to be pretty self-explanatory to you. Some of it you might need a little explanation on, and that's what we're going to get into right now. Let me get back to where you can see the piano. So, obviously, the first step is get the chords. Well, you can do that by simply going to a Google search, typing in the name of your song that you're trying to learn, and the word chords. It's going to bring up a lot of different options for you. Usually, Ultimate, I think it's called tabs.ultimateguitar.com or something in that neighborhood, will come up first, but they're not the only resource. But they're going to have lyrics and guitar chords. They call them guitar chords, but they're just chords, and you can follow them with the piano too. The second step after you've found that is listen to the song. So you can also do that through a number of free mediums. Go to YouTube or Spotify or Amazon Music or one of those many places and find the song and have a listen to it while you're staring at the chords. And then the third is where we are going to get to work here on the piano. That third step is identify the essential rhythm pattern or essential feel. Now, if you do not already know how to read chord symbols, this is not a difficult skill to pick up. You can do this without knowing how to read music, but if you do know how to read music, it should come even faster. But there's a lot of places that you can look for this information. I would encourage you to head over to PianoManApproach.com. I've got some free material there that might at least get you started on that. And but you need to know how to read chord symbols so that when you see just the letter C above the lyrics, then you know that it means to play this. Okay? Once you know how to do that, then we have to find what I call a rhythm pattern, or there's 4 basic essential feels, okay? And it's going to encapsulate 99.9% of all pop songs in all genres and all eras. One looks like this. I call it the basic feel. One looks like this, which I call the syncopated feel or the heartbeat. One looks like this, which I call the country feel. And the fourth looks like this, and I call it the waltz feel. And that is specifically for things in 3/4 or possibly in 6/8 or 12/8 as well. So, what we know about this song, if you listen to it, is that it does not have 3 beats in the measure, so we're probably going to rule out the waltz feel right out of the chute. So what we do to identify this rhythm pattern is we take the chord progression, which we found for free, and we start playing the different essential feels within that rhythm pattern to see which one fits the feel of the song. So we try the basic feel. Oh, thinking about that sounds terrible. That doesn't work at all, right? Baby, you're all that I want. When I sound in there and you're on. It's just like too choppy, right? Okay. So we can rule out number 1. Let's try the country feel just for fun. Baby, you're all that I want. When you're like, it's choppy and hokey. That doesn't fit this song at all. But if we try the heartbeat feel, the syncopated feel, we go, oh, thinking about all of the years. I don't know the words off the top of it. We were young and we were free. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, oh, eureka, there it is. That's encapsulating the sound of this so much better than the others. Now, why are we looking for a rhythm pattern? Because what you're trying to do as a solo piano player is not necessarily to copy the piano or the keyboard player from a particular recording. What you're trying to do is encapsulate the entirety of what the whole band is doing. Your left hand is doing the job of the drummer and the bass player, and your right hand is doing the job of the keyboards, the guitars, and even the lead singer if you're going to play melody in the right hand, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So I'm like, okay, there's our essential feel. Now here's the good news. If you know how to read your chord symbols, which as I said is a pretty easy skill to pick up, and then you know what the essential rhythm pattern is and you've mastered it, and we've got lots of good information over at Piano Man Approach about how you can train your hands to do become independent of themselves so that you can do that. Well, guess what? 80% of the work at least is already done. Okay? And let me demonstrate what I mean. If we just play the chord progression to the song with just that essential feel and we don't do another thing, you see how the song has basically come alive all of a sudden? It's because when you put a rhythm pattern into play, when you plug this chord progression into a rhythm pattern and put that in place, suddenly the whole thing comes alive as if you've got a whole band playing, and that's what we're after. So we've identified the rhythm pattern. The 4th step in the song learning formula is drill it down. What do I mean by drill it down? I mean that before you try to do anything special, before you try to do any of the signature licks or learn anything like that, before you do any kind of improv or anything like that, you just want to take that, the essential rhythm pattern, and you want to get those chords and that chord progression under your hands. Because each time we add a layer, so it's like we start with the chords, then we add the layer of the rhythm pattern. As we start to add layers of improv and other things over it, you want to make sure that you're not having to use your brain power on the layer before it. You always want to be using your brain actively on the top layer. You want the layers underneath to be almost on autopilot. So you don't try to do anything fancy, and you just work your way through that. So it's like C chord, A minor, G, D minor, A minor, B flat, G. Even for those of you who are going to want to play the melody in the right hand rather than sing, you still need to do this first, okay? Because the melody is a layer of complexity above the rhythm pattern. So you need to have the rhythm pattern and the chords under your fingers before you start trying to play the melody along with it, okay? So we want to keep every step along the way as simple as possible, and then master it, and then add another step. So then you get to the chorus, and it's F, G, A minor, C, F, G, then I think when you get to the bridge of the song, it's like D minor, F, A minor, G, D minor, F, C, G. And that's kind of all the sections of the song. So you just kind of play through the song a few times. Now, as I say, the nice thing is you're already playing a credible version of the song without anything special just by doing this rhythm pattern and the chords. And you're going to find that to be the case with almost every song, is that the rhythm pattern alone with the chord progression is just about the whole song. It's like I say, it's about 80%. So it's like you've already got your ice cream, you know, and now you just get to make a sundae out of it. The rest of everything else we're doing is chocolate syrup and whipped cream and nuts and maybe one of those cherries, you know. But the hard stuff, the most important thing that's going to make the song up is already done with just the chords and the rhythm pattern. So once you've drilled it down, now we take the fifth step, which is enhance with improv and signatures. So what do we mean by that? Well, we're going to take some very, very simple improv techniques, and let me tell you what my favorite ones for people, whether they're more advanced or whether even they're beginners, my favorite improv comes from playing on the chord that you're already on. Rather than moving your hand all the way up and down the keyboard a million times, there's a time and a place for that, but it can get old really fast, and it's also not the low-hanging fruit. It's difficult, but there's a lot of good, juicy stuff that you can do without even having to move your hand because you're just already here, and you can use little techniques to turn the chord that you're playing into an improv tool, okay? So we want to, first and foremost, my very favorite one, and people who watch my videos know a lot about this. I do a lot of what I call the toggle technique. Why do I call it toggling? Well, because you're going to take the chord and you're going to play part of it with the top half of your hand and then toggle back and forth with the thumb. Da, 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 da. And the idea here is to just create something interesting rhythmically. It can be thumb up and back to the thumb, or it can be top thumb back, and it can just be toggle, or it can be da-da-da. You know, it doesn't really matter, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. So what you're looking for is every once in a while, when there's a gap in where the singing would be, you're going to want to maybe use a toggle just to create a little bit of a fill or something. So we're going da-da-da-da-da-da-da. We were young and we were free. See how I use that toggle? So it's just a nice way to add a little bit of something besides just that plain quarter note going on there. It's a way to create that. The other thing you can do is you can create a variation of your rhythm pattern by using toggling while you are just playing the rhythm pattern. So instead of it being straight quarter notes like this, it could be okay. And the reason I'm showing you this stuff is, see, one of the things that drives me crazy about sheet music and even note-for-note tutorials, and I've taught my share of note-for-note tutorials for different songs. I usually do them just for Billy Joel and Elton John, for example, here on YouTube. But I don't really like teaching that way because it locks people into thinking that that's the only way they can play the song. And then you don't have a transferable skill to take to another song. These techniques you can use in this song, but then you can find another song and use the same rhythm pattern with that song's chord progression and use the toggle in that song. And because it's a different chord progression and maybe a different tempo or whatever, suddenly that song comes to life. So this is teaching you stuff that's going to allow you to play thousands of songs, not just teaching you, here's this really, really specific thing, and then you got to copy it exactly this way every single time. You should play it similarly every time, but you don't have to play it exactly the same way every time. And because you have these tools, you know the chords, you can play the chords in different inversions. You can play the C chord here, you can play it here, you can play it here. And because you can do little variations on the rhythm pattern and you can do these simple improv things I'm going to talk about, then you get to make choices as you play. While you're in the middle of the song, in the moment, you get to make choices, and it keeps the song fresh and alive for you. You know, that's the one thing. This is how I play pretty much everything, and maybe there will be a signature line or something that I play pretty much the same way every time. But 80% of the song, I'm making a choice in the moment, and no matter how similarly I did it this time to the last time I played it, it's never exactly the same way, and therefore it's always a spontaneous choice, and so the song stays interesting for me. Whereas if you learn something from sheet music or even a note-for-note tutorial, by the time you kind of master what they've told you to do, you've kind of chewed all the artistic flavor out of the gum, and it's not as fun to do anymore, if that makes sense. So this song and every other song I play stays, you know, sort of fun for me because I still get to make choices in the moment. Another of my favorite improv tools is arpeggiating. I like to... What it means is you take the chord and you play the individual notes that make up the chord, either up or down in succession. So the C chord, which has got C, E, G in it, you can play down G, E, C, or C, E, G. Just makes for kind of a nice fill. Oh, thinking about all our younger years. Da 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 da. See how I use that? Bum, bum, bum. And it could have been that. It can be different kinds of rhythms. The idea is that you're arpeggiating the chord. So or so I like that as a way to do that. You can also just pop it in from time to time to spice up your rhythm pattern. And what's really fun is when you get comfortable with a couple of these tools and then you're kind of like throwing them in kind of willy-nilly wherever you feel like it. So you're using both. And that's when it starts to get fun because you are making choices and it's a very spontaneous choice. Toggle. So you really get to have a lot of fun, and you get to make choices all along the way. And it's fun even if you're not singing and you're not playing the melody. This is really just kind of it feels good to play, and it's actually very good easy listening music even without the melody. So I'm not telling you not to play the melody. I'm just saying that that's beautiful piano music in and of itself. So, you know, the idea is you get comfortable with your chords so that you can use different inversions of your chords as a tool to dress things up. You get comfortable with some of these simple improvs, and you can either use the improv techniques to change up your rhythm pattern and create variations, or you use them to make little fills or solos. It's really good stuff. I like flutters, which is basically a really fast arpeggio that's kind of all sealed into one count. That would be something like this. See how it's just blah, blah, blah. Okay? So it's basically an arpeggio. You can flutter up or you can flutter down. It really doesn't matter. I tend to do it more down than I do up, but it can be done either way. Whatever sounds good to you is always right. This is not a science, it's an art. And what is good is always in the ear of the beholder. So that's how we learn a song. So we get through that glide formula, and you glide right through into having a pretty darn good, competent version of the song. Now, some of you are saying, but Steve, I want to play the melody. Well, guess what? Now that you've done this, there is a 4-step formula that you can use to add the melody in. Okay? So I call that one flow, and I do not have a visual aid for that as of yet. But what do I mean by flow? Step 1, F, find the melody. There's a number of different ways you can do this. You might do it through sheet music or a lead sheet or a fake book where they have the melody written out if you happen to read music. You might find a YouTube tutorial where someone's pounded that out for you. You might be able to pick it out by ear, and that's a skill that most people are perfectly capable of developing. They don't think they can because they're thinking too big, but picking out single note melodies, I promise you're probably not tone deaf. If you can tell that this and this are not the same note, just because you can hear that they're different pitches, then you have what you need to be able to develop the ability to pick out some simple melodies. We talk about that a little bit in the Piano Man Approach as well, so you can learn about that at pianomanapproach.com if you like. But once you find the melody, you lay it into the rhythm pattern. So we're going to kind of do a version of Drill It Down. We want to just sort of keep this nice, steady thing happening with your left hand and not try to do anything fancy. Just play the melody with the rhythm pattern. Okay, so okay, so you kind of work yourself. The reason why we do this is, once again, before we start to dress that up at all, we want to make sure that the melody is under your fingers, because you don't want to be giving a lot of your brain power to, where's the melody at? It's really, really hard to concentrate on more than one aspect of what you're playing at the same time. So you got to get each layer under your fingers before you pull the next layer in. Okay? So once the melody is kind of there and you're not wondering where it's going, and you've got it so that you can kind of play it without losing your thumb, your heartbeat, thumb, 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 down here in the left hand. Now we had find the melody, lay it in. The next part of the flow steps is O, which is ornament the melody. That means adding chords to it. It also means adding fills in the gaps between the lyrical phrasing, which is like this. So one of my favorite things is to just kind of play the chord that is in the right spot, and then play the melody, but just kind of let the chord sustain. So we're not going to try and follow it like a harmony. We're just going to kind of use the chord. So like, Okay, one of the things that people tend to frustrate themselves with this sort of thing is they try to jump too far too fast instead of just taking one little layer and adding it in at a time. It keeps sounding a little bit better. Let better be your friend. Okay, because one thing that's nice about this is that as your skill level improves, you're going to get, over the course of time, if you become a more advanced player, you'll have like all kinds of other options and ideas for improv and stuff. So you just keep getting to add cool stuff to this, different ways to ornament. Okay. So, but what you have to do is you have to say, I am where I am, and a little bit better is the next step, and a little bit better is the next step. And you'll be surprised how quickly it just becomes a really cool song. And that's the reason why we use rhythm patterns, because that's the fastest way to have a good sounding song on your hands, as opposed to the very long time it takes to develop the ability to read sheet music. And then, of course, like I say, you're stuck with one rigid arrangement and you can never do anything with it other than what they have written. So now another thing that I like to do is kind of start following with notes in the chord a little more rhythmically with the melody so that we create some kind of harmonizing. Thirds usually are pretty good for harmonizing. So like in this case, 1, 2, 3. Sixths tend to be pretty good for harmonizing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not always is not always an exact science, but it's just something to look for. But you kind of want to follow the chords. Now the next thing is you want to try to add in some of your toggles and arpeggios and such in the gaps in between these lyrical phrases. So it's like, see, there's a gap, so then it's rife for some kind of a little fill. So I was just kind of returning to the rhythm pattern. What I was doing there is returning to the rhythm pattern in the right hand a little bit when I would get to those gaps. So I play the melody, and when there's a little gap, I just return to the rhythm pattern, or in that case, I was toggling, but it was steady. So I wasn't looking for a fill as much as I was trying to create pace, just kind of keep the thing moving along. Arpeggio there. And then I'm on to do another verse. So then the W in flow stands for woohoo, way to go. Pat yourself on the back. You just won. You won this battle. You got it. Okay. So, or it stands for well done. I like a lot of positive reinforcement. What I would say is really fun about this method is that it keeps giving you something to work with over and over and over. So the last thing that you might look into adding into the mix would be a signature line. And again, Sometimes you can find a YouTube tutorial for that, or you might even be able to find it in sheet music. Sheet music sometimes does a good job of notating those kinds of things if you can read music. I'm not very good at reading music, but I can. So sometimes I'll use it for that. But in this case, for example, I don't normally take time in these sort of demonstration, videos for my glide formula to show an actual signature line. But in this particular song, it's fairly simple. So it's just like C, D, E, C, D, E, C, D, F, E, D, C. And then you can kind of use your thumb, and there's sort of this syncopated thing going. And it's all on a G. Your thumb just keeps toggling back and forth between a G and whatever other note you're playing. So C, G, D, G, E, C, G, D, G, E. So it's F with A there. That's a little bit of a harmony. That's a sixth. G and C, F and D. And under the bass, it's just C, A minor, G, F. Just a nice F chord there. And then you're ready for the song. And again, whether you're going to just play an accompaniment version and sing it, or you're going to accompany another singer, or if you're going to try and play the melody, those are your steps. You got the glide and the flow. And it works like a charm. All you need to do is learn the individual tools, the basic skill sets. You need to know how to read chords, and you need to understand your 4 essential rhythm patterns. You need some simple improv techniques. And then possibly you need to hone your ear training just a little bit so you can pick a melody out, just a single note melody, and you are good to go. And those skills can come together a lot faster than learning to read notes on a staff. Reading notes on a staff is a wonderful skill, and I'm not putting it down, but I can tell you that for most people, the dip that you have to get through to actually get good at that is so deep and so long that most people won't stick with it long enough to become good at it. They'll just abandon the instrument. At least some of these skills, almost anyone can pick up and start making some progress and start having some fun and feeling really good about what they're doing, and they can do it relatively quickly. And if you've already got some advanced training on piano, that you'll pick this stuff up really fast, which is wonderful. So, but you don't have to have advanced training. You can be a total novice and pick this stuff up. You just have to be taught the right stuff. So if this makes you curious about these tools and you'd like to go a little deeper on it, I'd encourage you to head over to pianomanaapproach.com and look into some of my free stuff. Hopefully there will be something there that you can take with you and use for the rest of your life and get some benefit out of. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I certainly enjoy putting these little videos together. And remember that the end goal is to feel good about it. You know, the only reason you want to be able to play the song is how you think it's going to make you feel. So make sure you're enjoying the journey. There are no happy destinations after miserable journeys. You know, we got to have fun along the way too. And that brings me to my personal mantra that I say like a broken record in all my videos. Remember, if you are not having fun when you're making music, you're doing it wrong. I'm Piano Man Steve Lungrin from the pianomanaapproach.com, and I thank you for your time. Happy playing, and I will see you on the next one.